You had the date. You did everything right. The conversation flowed. The chemistry was there. The sex was good. She left your place smiling. And then, silence. No texts, no calls, no explanation. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't want to hear. If sex were enough, she wouldn't disappear after giving you her body. Women can sleep with a man and still feel nothing pulling them back. Attraction didn't fail you. Connection did. And no, I'm not talking about romance. Not money. Not muscles. There's one specific trigger in the female brain that hits deeper than lust. When you activate it, she doesn't just want you, she bonds to you. Not by choice, by biology. Sex excites her body. This rewires her nervous system. I'm telling you this as a woman who understands exactly how women attach and why they walk away from men who thought they did everything right. This isn't about simping, chasing, or emotional theatric. It's about learning how to hold emotional frame without losing your edge. If you want content that actually gives you leverage instead of illusions, hit like and subscribe now. This isn't entertainment. This is understanding the game, so you're no longer playing it blind. Let's break down what's really happening and why it changes everything. You were taught a very specific lie about attraction. Maybe not directly, maybe not in words, but through movies, social media, dating advice, and other men who were just as confused as you. Look better. Make more money. Be more confident. Be more impressive. And if you stack enough of those traits together, a woman will stay. Here's the part no one says out loud. Most men who get left behind weren't unattractive. They weren't awkward. They didn't mess it up in the bedroom. In fact, many of them did everything right on paper. They got the date. They got the chemistry. They got the sex. And then they got nothing. Because getting a woman's body has never been the real challenge. Keeping a place in her emotional world is. That's the gap most men don't see until it hurts. Women don't walk away because sex was bad. They walk away because nothing lingered after it was over. No imprint. No emotional echo. No reason for her nervous system to pull her back toward you when you're not there. You can excite her for a night and still be forgettable by morning. That's the brutal distinction. Attraction isn't measured by how intense the moment was. It's measured by what remains when the moment ends. And most men leave no residue behind. They leave no emotional signal strong enough to compete with her independence, her options, her life. So she doesn't stay. She doesn't chase. She doesn't explain. She simply moves on. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The men who lose women this way usually believe they were exciting, fun, confident, even dominant. They confuse stimulation with impact. They think desire equals attachment. It doesn't. A woman can desire you and still feel nothing tying her to you. She can enjoy you and still feel safer walking away than staying connected. That's why this feels so confusing from the male side. You felt something happen. She didn't feel something settle. And that difference changes everything. She didn't leave because you weren't exciting. She left because nothing in her stayed with you. To understand why excitement fades but attachment lingers, you have to stop thinking in terms of romance and start thinking in terms of chemistry. Not metaphorical chemistry. Actual brain chemistry. Most of what men call attraction runs on dopamine. Dopamine is the hit, the rush, the spike. It's released through novelty, flirting, sexual tension, sex itself. It's what makes your heart race and your focus narrow. And dopamine is powerful, but it's temporary. High, crash, gone. That's why lust burns hot and fast. Dopamine doesn't bond. It motivates. It pushes someone to chase a feeling, not a person. Once the feeling fades, the pull fades with it. No matter how intense the night was, dopamine doesn't give her a reason to return when the stimulation is over. Oxytocin works differently. Oxytocin is released when a woman feels emotionally safe, when she feels seen instead of evaluated, when her nervous system relaxes around you rather than staying alert. It's the same hormone involved in long-term bonding, trust, and attachment. It's what turns "this was fun" into "this feels right." And here's the part most men miss. Oxytocin doesn't feel dramatic. It feels calming, grounding, familiar. It doesn't spike. It settles. When oxytocin is activated, her body starts associating you with safety and regulation. Not excitement alone, but relief. Not stimulation, but comfort. Her system begins to register you as someone she can lower her guard around. That's when attachment starts forming. She doesn't just like you, her body remembers you. This is why a woman can walk away from incredible sex without looking back, and still find herself thinking about a man who didn't try to impress her at all. One gave her dopamine, the other gave her oxytocin. Dopamine excites her. Oxytocin imprints you, and imprinting isn't a conscious choice. It's not something she decides logically. It happens beneath thought, beneath language, beneath intention. Her nervous system makes the call long before her mind explains it. So when men say, "I don't understand, the chemistry was insane," they're usually describing dopamine. And when women say, "I don't know why, I just feel comfortable with him," they're describing oxytocin. One fades quickly, the other rewires attachment. Once you understand that difference, a lot of confusion disappears, and you start to see why excitement alone never makes a woman stay, but safety makes her bond. You've probably lived this one. The date went well. The vibe felt easy. The sex wasn't awkward. It was good. She laughed. She stayed the night. She kissed you goodbye. And then the next morning, nothing. No good morning, no follow-up, no slow fade, just silence. From the male side, this feels brutal because your mind is replaying the highlights. You're thinking about the connection, the intimacy, the way she responded to you. But while you're replaying the night, she's already emotionally gone. Not because she's cold, not because she's heartless, and not because you did something wrong. She disappeared because nothing anchored her to stay. Sex, by itself, doesn't create meaning. It creates sensation. And sensation fades fast once the body returns to baseline. If there's no emotional signal beneath the physical experience, her nervous system has no reason to pull her back toward you. So when the stimulation ends, so does the attachment. This is where most men misread what happened. They assume ghosting is a judgment of their performance. It isn't. It's a lack of emotional gravity. You didn't repel her. You simply didn't register deeply enough to matter. Think about it this way. Her body experienced pleasure, but her system never relaxed. She enjoyed the moment, but she never felt safe enough to settle. And without that sense of settling, there's no internal pull to reconnect. That's why explanations never come. From her side, there's nothing to explain. No unresolved tension. No emotional thread left hanging. The night closed cleanly. And here's the hard truth men avoid. Women don't stay because something felt good. They stay because something felt grounding. Because being with you lowered their internal noise instead of adding to it. If nothing in her nervous system softened around you, she won't return. No matter how confident you were. No matter how good the sex was. No matter how right everything seemed. Ghosting isn't rejection. It's absence of attachment. And until you understand that distinction, this pattern will keep repeating itself. With different women, same ending. Let me show you how this plays out in real life, because theory only clicks once you see the contrast. Picture the first man. On paper, he's everything most men think women want. Tall, well-dressed, successful. He plans impressive dates, orders confidently, speaks with certainty. From the outside, he looks like a win. Friends would tell her she's lucky. Other men would assume he has it handled. And yet, something is missing. Every conversation stays on the surface. When she shares something personal, He responds correctly, but not emotionally. He hears her words, but nothing in him registers how she feels. There's no judgment, but there's also no depth, no resonance, no sense that she's actually being received. Being with him feels polished and strangely empty. Now contrast that with the second man. He isn't flawless. He's not flashy. He doesn't overwhelm the room when he walks in. But when she talks, he's present, not performative, not trying to fix or impress. He notices the shift in her tone. He asks questions that aren't scripted. When she jokes darkly, he doesn't correct her. He understands her humor. And when she opens up emotionally, he doesn't rush to solve it or change the subject. He stays, calm, grounded, unthreatened by her feelings. Something subtle happens here. Around him, her nervous system slows down. She doesn't feel evaluated. She doesn't feel like she has to maintain an image. She can drop the mask without being punished for it. And that sense of permission, that feeling of being emotionally seen without being managed, changes how her body responds. This is where attachment forms, not because he's better on paper, but because being with him feels regulating. Over time, she finds herself thinking about him more, missing his presence, not his validation, wanting to share things with him before anyone else, and she might not even be able to explain why. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it feels inevitable. She didn't feel more attracted in the usual sense. She felt at home, and that feeling, comfort without boredom, safety without control, is rare. When a woman finds it, her system doesn't let go easily. That's why one man gets replaced quickly, while the other becomes the standard she compares everyone else to. This is where most men misunderstand what emotional safety really is. They hear the word safe and immediately think weak, passive, predictable, nice in a way that kills desire, so they push against it. They stay guarded, detached, overly dominant, because no man wants to be the guy she feels comfortable with, but doesn't want. But emotional safety has nothing to do with softness. It's about steadiness. A man who creates emotional safety isn't chasing approval. He isn't over-explaining himself. He isn't trying to perform masculinity or prove his value. He's grounded in who he is, and that groundedness transmits something powerful to a woman's nervous system. Calm. When you're emotionally solid, she doesn't feel rushed. She doesn't feel tested. She doesn't feel like one wrong word will change your mood or threaten your interest. That predictability at the emotional level, not the behavioral one, is what allows her to relax. And when she relaxes, she opens. This is where the power shift happens. A man who provides emotional safety sets the pace. He doesn't need to push intimacy forward because her system begins to move toward him naturally. She shares more. She invests more. She becomes more responsive, not because he demands it, but because being with him feels regulating instead of draining. This kind of presence is rare. Most men are either emotionally distant or emotionally needy. One makes her feel unseen. The other makes her feel responsible. Neither creates safety. But the man who can stay present without grasping, who can listen without fixing, lead without controlling, becomes someone her body trusts. And trust is leverage. Not the manipulative kind, the biological kind. Because once a woman associates you with emotional stability, she stops scanning for exits. She stops bracing herself. She stops keeping one foot out the door. Her defenses lower, not because she's convinced, but because her system no longer feels the need to protect her. That's when attachment deepens. Not through intensity, through consistency. The man who makes her feel safe doesn't rush the connection. He controls the pace by not needing the outcome. And that quiet confidence, that lack of urgency, is what gives him influence without effort. The man who makes her feel safe controls the pace. Here's where a lot of men go wrong after hearing all this. They hear emotional connection and immediately swing to the other extreme. They start oversharing, over-explaining, unloading their past wounds like intimacy is built through confession alone. They mistake vulnerability for depth and intensity for closeness. And it backfires. Emotional connection is not emotional dumping. Telling her everything you've been through doesn't make her feel closer to you. It often makes her feel responsible for you. And responsibility is the fastest way to kill attraction. When a man trauma dumps early, texts constantly for reassurance, or needs her to regulate his emotions, her system doesn't relax. It tightens. She feels pressure instead of safety, obligation instead of desire. That's not bonding. That's burden. Women don't pull away because men are emotional. They pull away because the emotion is unstable, because it leaks urgency, because it signals that he needs her presence to feel okay. And neediness, no matter how softly it's packaged, feels heavy. What women respond to is presence. The ability to be emotionally available without being emotionally dependent. A man who can listen without collapsing into the story. Who can care without losing his center. Who can hold space without needing something back in return. That kind of emotional regulation is attractive because it communicates strength at a nervous system level. It tells her, I'm steady. You don't have to manage me. And when she doesn't have to manage you, she can relax into herself. That's the difference most men miss. They think opening up means giving more. In reality, it means staying grounded while she opens up. It means not hijacking the emotional moment with your own insecurities. It means allowing closeness to develop without rushing to secure it. Presence creates pull. Neediness creates pressure. A woman wants to feel connected to a man, not responsible for him. She wants to feel met, not leaned on. When you understand that distinction, emotional connection stops repelling women and starts drawing them in naturally. Presence is attractive. Neediness is not. At this point, the question isn't whether emotional connection matters. It's how to create it without losing yourself in the process. Because here's the truth most men never hear. Emotional bonding is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be practiced without turning you into someone you're not. It starts with curiosity that isn't strategic. Not questions designed to impress, but questions that reveal identity. The kind that invite her to step out of autopilot. When you ask a woman who she really is beneath her roles, she feels seen instead of assessed. And being seen is one of the fastest ways to create attachment. But connection doesn't come from questions alone. It comes from how you respond. Most men hear words. Very few hear emotion. When you reflect how she feels instead of parroting what she says, her system registers resonance. She doesn't feel like she's talking at you. She feels like she's connecting with you. That sense of emotional attunement builds trust without effort. Then there are shared emotional anchors, private jokes, small rituals, moments that belong only to the two of you. These don't need to be dramatic. In fact, the smaller they are, the more powerful they become. They create memory, and memory creates meaning. Over time, thinking of you triggers a feeling, not just an image. Another crucial piece most men get wrong is the urge to fix. When she vents, she's not asking for solutions. She's asking to be understood. The man who can sit with her discomfort without trying to control it signals emotional leadership. He shows that he's not overwhelmed by emotion, his own or hers. That steadiness is deeply attractive. And finally, there's restraint. The less you try to impress her, the safer you feel. Performance creates pressure. Authentic presence creates ease. When you're not trying to win her, she stops feeling like she's being evaluated and starts feeling like she's being invited. This is the paradox. Emotional bonds form fastest when you're not chasing them. You don't create connection by sacrificing your frame. You create it by staying centered while allowing closeness to develop naturally. That balance, openness without need, interest without urgency, is what separates men who are remembered from men who are replaced. Emotional connection isn't about giving more. It's about holding steady while something deeper forms. When a woman truly bonds with you, the entire dynamic changes, quietly but completely. She doesn't suddenly announce it. She doesn't make a dramatic declaration. She simply starts moving differently. Her desire deepens, not louder, not needier, deeper. Sex becomes less performative and more present. There's more eye contact, more openness, more willingness to give without being asked, because she's no longer protecting herself from you. Her loyalty shifts too, not in the sense of obligation, but orientation. You become the person she thinks of first, the one she wants to tell things to, the one she compares others against without realizing she's doing it. Even when you're not around, your presence lingers because her body has learned that being connected to you feels regulating. And vulnerability follows naturally. She shares more of herself, not because you pulled it out of her, but because she feels safe enough to let it surface. When a woman bonds at the nervous system level, she stops managing how she's perceived. She doesn't need to impress you. She doesn't need to stay guarded. She trusts that who she is will be received, not judged or used. This is where men often misunderstand what's happening. They think she's staying because they did something right, or because they finally said the right thing, or because they won her. But bonding doesn't work that way. She's not staying because you convinced her. She's staying because her body chose you. That choice shows up as ease, as consistency, as a quiet pull that doesn't need to be chased or reinforced. You're no longer trying to hold her attention. You already occupy a place inside her emotional world. And notice what isn't happening here. You're not chasing. You're not begging. You're not over-explaining your value. You're being chosen. This is the level most men never reach because they keep trying to stimulate desire instead of cultivating attachment. They confuse intensity with depth and urgency with connection. But the man who understands bonding doesn't rush. He doesn't force. He allows her system to settle. And once it does, it doesn't want to leave. She doesn't stay because she should. She stays because her body feels right with you. By now, you should see the pattern clearly. Sex opens the door. But emotional connection is what makes her lock it from the inside. Most men spend their lives trying to be more exciting, sharper, louder, more impressive. And they keep losing women not because they're unattractive, but because nothing about them feels settling. Nothing tells her nervous system, you're safe here. That's why the cycle repeats. Great night, strong chemistry, silence afterward. Not because she's broken, not because dating is unfair, but because stimulation alone never creates attachment. Real attraction isn't noisy. It doesn't announce itself with drama or urgency. It's quiet. It's slow. It's the feeling of ease that grows when a woman doesn't need to protect herself around you, when her body stops scanning for danger, when being with you feels better than being alone. That's what makes a man unforgettable. If you don't understand this, you'll keep confusing desire with connection. You'll keep chasing intensity, wondering why it never turns into loyalty. And you'll keep telling yourself the story that women are unpredictable, when in reality, their behavior follows a very consistent emotional logic. But once you understand how bonding actually works, you stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop trying to secure outcomes that were never meant to be forced. You become the man who stays calm while others grasp, present while others perform, chosen while others compete. If this shifted how you see attraction, hit subscribe. If you've lived the experience of doing everything right and still losing her, leave a comment. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting clarity. Any man can touch her body. Very few know how to stay in her nervous system.